Imagine a pastor in front of thousands of people criticizing the very system he once supported rather than offering a message of hope. The megachurch world has just been rocked by Pastor John Gray's outspoken identification of the problems and hypocrisy, as well as his allusions to well-known figures like Bishop T.D. Jakes and Gino Jennings. Are these preachers being singled out specifically? Or was the religious community never ready for this wake-up call? Hold on tight, because what you're about to hear is going to rock the Christian world. People pay attention to what Pastor John Gray has to say. This time, however, it was not a sermon full of consoling words or words of encouragement. Rather, it was an audacious and unreserved statement aimed at the core of the megarch system. John Gray has spent years balancing his roles as a well-known pastor and a gospel worker. However, he is suddenly taking a stand and saying things that might permanently alter our perception of contemporary ministry. This video delves further into what Pastor Gray stated, why his remarks are causing a stir in the church community, and whether or not pastors like Gino Jennings and Bishop T.D. Jakes are the unintended victims of his audacious remarks. You will learn about the long-rumored scandals, the unsaid rivalries, and the underlying tensions amongst megarch leaders. This is when things start to get interesting. This is about more than one man voicing his opinions. In churches that are increasingly more like businesses than houses of worship, there is a movement, a change, and an increasing call for accountability. What was the true meaning behind John Gray's shout-out? Who is it that he is accusing? And why now, when the field of spiritual leadership is already being scrutinized so much? By the time you finish watching this film, you will understand not just the specifics of John Gray's teaching, but also how it relates to some of the most well-known figures in American Christianity. You won't want to miss what happens next, I promise. It was an unfiltered moment. Pastor John Gray did not use evasive theological metaphors or sugarcoat his remarks. Instead, he kept his ground and said that too many churches, particularly big megarches, had forgotten why they were built. He explained a system in which leaders enjoy wealth, position, and power while pastors have become celebrities. The pulpit is used as a stage, and congregations are frequently left spiritually hungry. Pastor Gray had previously expressed his opinions, but this time it felt different. His message had the weight of someone who has seen enough from behind the scenes of church politics, and his tone was harsher and his words harder. Keep in mind that John Gray is not an outsider who is disparaging the church. He has visited the very spaces where the most prominent figures in the ministry congregate. He has appeared on stages alongside well-known pastors. He has first-hand knowledge of the inner workings of the system. He noted in his speech that pastors are now more concerned with establishing empires than with shepherding people. He talked about how some churches operate more like businesses than places of worship, and the perils of putting men before God. The connotation was obvious. He wasn't referring to local pastors who are battling to maintain their churches. He was speaking to the titans of the religious world, those with enormous fan bases, multi-million-dollar structures, and worldwide clout. This is where it becomes even more interesting. Even though John Gray didn't specifically name anyone, the Christian community started making assumptions right once. Was he referring to Bishop T.D. Jakes, one of the world's most well-known and significant pastors who has amassed a ministry empire that serves millions of people? Or was he referring to Gino Jennings, a man who frequently exposes what he perceives to be erroneous doctrine and corruption in the church and is renowned for his straightforward, unapologetic preaching style? Or was John Gray targeting the system in general instead of specific men? This initial call to action generated discussion, sparked debates, and quickly went viral on social media. Clips of his remarks went viral, with some criticizing him for being hypocritical given his own contentious past, and others applauding him for finally tackling the problem. But no matter where individuals stood, one thing was certain. A discussion that many megarch leaders would prefer to keep private has recently been initiated by John Gray. They do not want you to know the surprising portion, though. In addition to questioning the present, Pastor Gray's remarks also touch on long-running disputes in the church that the majority of people are unaware of. We will go into detail about such scandals and how they expose a side of megarch culture that is rarely seen by the general public in our following segment. We must take a step back and examine the development of megachurch culture in America in order to appreciate the significance of Pastor John Gay's call. Megarches have long been seen in Christianity as representations of success, authority, and influence. Some pastors have become household names thanks to large structures, cutting-edge sound systems, best-selling books, and sermons that are broadcast on television all over the world. These churches turn into inspirational and hopeful spaces for many. Others, however, saw them as a sign of something more sinister, a merging of celebrity and religion that frequently prioritize personality over the gospel. In this world, scandals are nothing new. Some of the most well-known preachers have been embroiled in controversy within the past 30 years. These scandals, which range from moral failings to financial malfeasance, have frequently reached the top page. Every time, the consequences cause many believers to doubt their faith and pose important queries on church accountability. It is commonly known that temptations increase in tandem with the church's expansion into a large institution. Even the most powerful leaders are put to the test by money, power, and influence. This is where John Gay's remarks hurt the most. He is tackling more than just the obvious problems of fame and wealth by criticizing the system. He is pointing to a decades-old trend in which certain leaders function with little to no transparency, protected by devoted followers and insulated boards. The core of servant leadership, according to critics, is lost when pastors become untouchable. The church can become a place where people construct their own personal kingdoms rather than a haven for the shattered. Consider it. Pastors have been reported to fly on private aircraft, live in multi-million-dollar mansions, and wear luxury clothes in recent years, all while their congregations struggle financially. Throughout the Christian community, this has generated discussions. Is this exploitation or real prosperity? Are these signs of a flawed system, or are they gifts from God? There are theological disagreements as well. Leaders like Gino Jennings have made it their mission to challenge what they see to be erroneous doctrine in mainstream churches. Jennings has publicly charged megachurch leaders with diluting the gospel in order to gain notoriety and financial gain. But others, like Bishop T.D. Jakes, have defended their ministry by citing the millions of lives they have affected through global conferences, outreach, and writings. Tension is created by these divergent viewpoints, and John Gay's remarks appear to strike squarely in the center of that tension, causing more discord. However, time is what makes this particular moment special. Scandals can no longer be kept under wraps in this day and age. Every speech, every remark, and every error are magnified on social media. Within hours of a video clip becoming viral, everyone on the planet can view it. This implies that megarch leaders are under more scrutiny than ever, and the impact is tremendous when someone like John Gray, who is credible in the public eye and has insider knowledge, chooses to speak up. This is where the intensity increases even further. Many people think John Gray is discussing more than just theoretical concepts. His remarks allude to certain individuals, customs, and issues that have been simmering beneath the surface for many years. But who is he specifically pointing at? Is he subtly criticizing the most well-known figures in ministry today, or is he questioning the megachurch system as a whole? In the following section, we will look at how Bishop T.D. Jakes and Gino Jennings relate to this dispute, and the reasons why so many people think they are at the heart of Pastor Gay's audacious speech. There will always be conjecture when a preacher like John Gray makes big claims about megachurches and the people who lead them. Naturally, people start to make connections. And in this instance, everyone's attention immediately goes to two of the most divisive personalities in contemporary Christianity, Pastor Gino Jennings and Bishop T.D. Jakes. First, let's talk about Bishop T. Jakes, renowned across the world for being the head of the Dallas, Texas-based Potter's House. One of the most well-known preachers in the world is Jakes. His impact extends well beyond the pulpit. He has written best-selling books, produced films, hosted conferences, and even influenced politics. Millions of people view Jake as a spiritual father figure who blends charm with common sense. However, criticism has also followed that influence. He is criticized for prioritizing empire development over ministry. Some contend that the combination of fame, fortune, and religion that John Gray was criticizing is embodied in his money, way of life, and extensive global influence. Now think of Gino Jennings. Jennings is the antithesis of Jake, who stands for the polished, mainstream face of contemporary Christianity. Jennings, who is well known for his ferocious sermons and unyielding position, has established a reputation for exposing what he sees as immorality, erroneous doctrine, and corruption in the church. Jennings thrives on direct confrontation, in contrast to Jake, who has frequently shied away from it. Without apologies, he demands holiness, calls out practices, and names names. He is viewed by his supporters as a prophetic figure who opposes compromise. He is seen by his detractors as being too harsh and polarizing. Why then are these two men believed to be John Gay's secret targets? Due to the fact that they represent opposing viewpoints. Jake, on the one hand, is a symbol of the success-driven megarch paradigm, which some claim has shifted away from the Bible and toward branding. Jennings, on the other hand, stands for the staunch opposition to that system. Many people thought Jake and other leaders were being alluded to when John Gray talked about pastors who have made churches into corporations. Additionally, some believed he was alluding to Jennings when he talked of combative voices who feed on discrediting others. Online, this notion caused a stir. John Gay quotes were analyzed, replayed, and circulated thousands of times. The situation grew as some questioned, was that a shot at Jake? Was he indirectly talking about Jennings? Both men have sizable, devoted fan bases that are quick to defend their pastors from any criticism. John Gay's remarks were viewed as disrespectful and possibly even jealous by Jake's supporters. After all, Jake served as Gray's mentor at various stages of his career, and many people felt that Gray owed some of his platform to Jake. The message can be interpreted by Jennings's followers as disparaging his fiery approach, which they perceive as a divinely mandated effort to maintain the church's integrity. Pastor Gray found himself in a precarious position in both situations, opposing the establishment while simultaneously inciting conflict among the titans who rule the contemporary religious scene. At this point, the narrative takes an even more intriguing turn. Regardless of whether John Gray intended to expressly criticize Jake or Jennings, his remarks have ignited a debate that will not end. It compels us to pose challenging queries. Do pastors need to lead glamorous lives? Do churches need to function like businesses? Should we applaud or condemn voices that are combative, like Jennings? The majority of people are unaware of this, though. It's possible that John Gay's remarks go beyond personality. They might also highlight his personal battle to strike a balance between responsibility, faith, and celebrity. A battle that reflects the very problems he is criticizing. We shall examine John Gay's personal journey, his controversies, and the reasons why some people label him a prophet for this generation, while others accuse him of hypocrisy in the next section. We must face the truth of John Gray's own journey in order to fully appreciate the significance of his remarks. Because the paradox is in this place. The same pastor who is now demanding responsibility in megachurch culture has been in the same spotlight as others because of his own scandals, hardships, and criticism. John Gray was hailed as a rising star in the American church for many years. He stood out in a field where many leaders come across as aloof or unapproachable because of his charm, humor, and relatability. He was candid about his difficulties, frank about his shortcomings, and open about his progress. Because of his openness, he became very well liked, particularly by younger audiences who thought they could relate to a pastor who didn't put on a front. Then the disputes started. Questions concerning his leadership style, charges of infidelity, and charges of embezzlement of church funds started to arise. Online rumors about lavish presents, such as a fancy car for his wife, went viral. He was accused of hypocrisy by his detractors for leading the identical lifestyle he now advocates. However, supporters contended that his authenticity stems from his candor about these errors. They asserted that rather than hiding his flaws, he used them to illustrate God's grace. John Gray was put in a difficult situation by these scandals. They undermined his credibility in the view of many on the one hand. On the other hand, they allowed him to witness firsthand the dysfunction in church leadership. His mission of transformation is now fueled by this experience. He is not acting as an aloof critic when he talks about the perils of celebrity, wealth, and power corrupting the pulpit. As someone who has experienced the very temptations he cautions against, he speaks from experience. Because of this, his current position is both potent and divisive. John Gray is seen by his fans as a voice in the wilderness, speaking up when others are frightened to. He is viewed by his detractors as a faulty messenger who engages in the same transgressions that he exposes. However, it is precisely because of this tension that his comments are so powerful. Because you can't ignore him, whether you agree with him or not. The irony almost gets poetry at this point. The very system that John Gray is opposing is reflected in his problems. He is aware of what it's like to be examined like a public figure, to get criticism like a politician, and to receive applause like a star. His life serves as a live illustration of the perilous and intricate nature of the megarch world. Therefore, his discussion of reform goes beyond mere theory. It's a matter of survival. However, this poses a more profound query. Does John Gray really seek change as seen by his criticism of the system? Or is he attempting to improve his public perception of himself? Is he trying to put the blame on others in order to separate himself from his past transgressions? Or is this a prophetic warning? The plot becomes even more dramatic at this point, because his remarks have started a dialogue that cannot be stopped, regardless of how sincere his intentions are. These days, churches, leaders, and members are all being compelled to consider their own practices, leaders, and definitions of what it means to be a true follower of Christ. The broader ramifications of John Gray's remarks, their impact on megachurches across America, other pastors' responses, and how social media has magnified this debate into something far bigger will all be covered in the next section. Then the sermon of one man. It's possible that Pastor John Gray was unaware of the magnitude of the response when he made his audacious remarks. In the era of social media, a single video clip has the power to spark discussions, advance narratives, and go viral in a matter of hours, and that's precisely what took place here. Within days, fragments of John Gray's lecture started to appear on Facebook, Instagram Reels, YouTube clips, and TikTok. Provocative wording was used as the caption for each clip. The megarch machine is revealed by John Gray. Or is he referring to T.D. Jakes, which immediately piques interest? Millions of people saw these videos thanks to the algorithms. What would have been a routine sermon moment abruptly turned into a platform-wide talking point. Responses rushed in from every direction. Gray was commended by some churchgoers for expressing what many had been feeling for years. They contended that in a society when the majority of pastors keep quiet about corruption, his candor is welcome. Finally, someone said it, and this is the kind of preaching we need, and similar remarks became frequent. These admirers saw Gray as a kind of whistleblower who spoke the truth and revealed what they thought was concealed under the glamour of megarches. However, not everybody was having a party. Critics were quick to defend their leaders, including ardent followers of Pastor Gino Jennings and Bishop T.D. Jakes. They perceived Gray's remarks as jealousy or even treachery. He was accused of criticizing well-known figures in an attempt to remain relevant. Others questioned whether he had the moral right to criticize others, bringing up his own scandals. They did not consider John Gray to be a prophet. He was a hypocrite. Megachurch leaders themselves, meanwhile, mostly kept quiet, at least in public. Although Bishop Jakes and Gino Jennings did not immediately address Gray's remarks, their silence only served to increase conjecture. Did they try to put aside small-time drama by being quiet? Or was it a calculated move to keep things from getting worse? For whatever reason, the internet discussion was only made more heated by the absence of response. This is where social media further complicated matters. People started researching the story when it became popular. Users pieced together old sermon snippets from Jake, Jennings, and Gray to demonstrate who was the target. Side-by-side comparisons were made by TikTok creators. Every element was examined in opinion pieces published by Christian blogs and commentary videos broadcast by YouTubers. What began as a single message grew into a broad controversy that touched on issues of theology, church culture, finances, and even the role of celebrities in Christianity. Because it reveals a more serious problem, this ripple effect is important. Surface-level explanations no longer satisfy a large number of believers. They desire openness. They desire responsibility. They want pastors to be more than just affluent influencers or inspirational speakers. And the public does not let go easy when someone like John Gray starts a conversation. Here's what most folks don't notice though. There is more to this dispute than megachurches. It has to do with America's religious future. Given the overall decline in church attendance and the growing skepticism of younger people toward organized religion, such incidents can increase mistrust or create opportunities for change. Leaders run the danger of losing even more credibility if they disregard the need for change. However, they could reshape what contemporary ministry looks like if they accept it. The repercussions are already apparent. Gray's statements are being used by small churches to encourage change within their own memberships. The question of whether megachurches should exist at all is being debated in open forums by online Christian communities. Additionally, more pastors are starting to voice their concerns about the perils of combining fame with faith. Here's the cliffhanger though. This discussion is far from finished. It might even be the beginning. Even though John Gay's remarks rocked the Christian community, there are rumors of more significant stories. Unreported scandals, impending exposés, and widening rifts inside the church that may make his call-out seem insignificant. We'll explore the more profound ramifications, what this implies for megachurches going forward, how it might affect the balance of power among religious leaders, and why this event might be seen as a watershed in American Christianity in the following part. John Gay's audacious remarks have repercussions beyond contentious church discussions and online arguments. They get right to the core of the American church's current state and potential future directions. For many years, the Christian scene has been dominated by the megachurch model, which is characterized by large congregations, well-known pastors, and multi-million-dollar structures. Will it, however, withstand this fresh round of doubt and criticism? We must acknowledge what megachurches stand for in order to comprehend the stakes. They serve as bright examples of what the church can be for some people. Vibrant worship sessions, multicultural communities, and worldwide ministries. For instance, Bishop T.D. Jakes' influence has permeated politics, culture, and education through the Potter's House. Leaders from all walks of life attend his seminars, and his influence extends well beyond the pulpit. In a similar vein, Geno Jennings' unwavering position has amassed a sizable fan base that spans nations, with people eager to hear his straightforward and confronting preaching. Megachurches, however, represent everything that has gone wrong for some people. They cite moral failings, financial problems, and a widening divide between congregations and leaders. They witness pastors leading lives more akin to those of Hollywood stars than of lowly workers. They observe that churches are more like businesses than biblical communities, with branding, marketing plans, and leadership structures that are more like those of corporations. This gap has been exacerbated by John Gay's call-out, which has made Christians face difficult issues. Should pastors have unrestricted control over organizations worth millions of dollars? When members are struggling to make ends meet, should churches condone extravagant lifestyles? Should sermons emphasize personal empowerment over holiness, service, and repentance? Although these are not new questions, Gray's remarks have urgently brought them back into the spotlight. This is where the change in power starts. A small group of pastors controlled the American Christian scene for many years, influencing politics, society, and theology. However, that supremacy is now being questioned since social media gives all voices a forum. YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram are being used by influencers, smaller pastors, and even regular Christians to hold authorities responsible. Real-time scandals are revealed, bank records are scrutinized, and sermon clips are analyzed. Megachurch leaders' once exclusive control over the narrative is eroding. This change goes beyond exposure alone. It has to do with empowerment. Younger generations are more interested in authenticity and less impressed with well-executed productions. Especially Gen Z and millennials. They are attracted to pastors who are honest about their challenges, own up to their mistakes, and steer clear of the gimmicks of celebrity culture. This implies that church leadership may appear considerably different in the future than it did in the past. It's possible that a new generation of leaders who are open, responsible, and genuinely involved in their communities is displacing the untouchable megachurch pastors of the past. Here's the twist, though. Megachurches will not vanish overnight as a result of this change. They still have millions of devoted followers, enormous wealth, and enormous power. That being said, their ability to survive will rely on how they handle situations such as these. Leaders run the risk of alienating the very people they are trying to reach if they increase their focus on riches, power, and secrecy. However, they might not only endure but flourish in a new chapter of church history if they embrace change, accountability, and humility. John Gay's involvement gets extremely intriguing at this point. His remarks have become a trigger, whether he meant to or not. Megachurch leaders are unable to ignore the forced conversations he has sparked. He has positioned himself in the middle of a controversy that will influence how American Christianity develops in the future. And even while his own history casts doubt on his reliability, his audacity guarantees that the concerns he brought up won't be ignored. This is where it might all change, though. Rumors of other leaders being exposed by insiders, investigation reports, and impending exposés are already circulating. Some people think that this is only the beginning and that the megachurch world is about to face its most significant reckoning to yet.